Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today we have kind of a canning extravaganza going on. We are doing lots of canning today, so I am finishing up a batch of jalapenos. So if you hear background noise, that would be the canner going. But I am going to show you guys how I can my spaghetti sauce and tomato juice. I get them both at once, and I'll show you exactly how I do that. I do can my tomatoes just a little bit different than I have seen other people do it. So I really like the way that I do it, so I thought I'd share it with you guys. But let's go ahead and look at our setup and all the stuff that we have to can our sauce today. Alright, so this station right here is kind of going to be my tomato prepping area. So we've got lots of different tomatoes. We've got 3 varieties, and I'm going to be kind of just mixing them all together to give it a nice flavor. Use whatever tomatoes you have. I've got Bonnie's Best, Roma's, what else? Amish Paste, and San Marzano. I'm going to be doing a whole mashup of all these different kinds, but my first step is going to be to cut off the cores. So this top part, usually I do the little bottom kind of stemmy area there, and if there's any ugly parts, don't throw out your ugly tomatoes. You're going to want to still use any part that's good. As long as there's no rotten parts, you're going to want to go ahead and use those tomatoes as well. So I'm just going to use this little tool here. And these are great for strawberries, anything you gotta cut like a core out, but they are very sharp, so keep that in mind. So here I just go ahead and remove that real easily, and then like I said, that usually that bottom ugly part, and then I have a bowl here where I just fill up this bowl. I've got a bucket here. This is going to be for the pigs, so I just put all of my waste there in that bucket. And once I have a lot of tomatoes to do today, so I'm going to be just kind of doing it in steps. So my first step here, like I said, is to do that. Once I fill up my bowl, I'm going to take it over to my stove, and that's where I'm going to blanch these for just a couple minutes in boiling water, and that will make the skins just fall right off. So let's go ahead and look over there, and I'll show you that. Alright, we've got a bunch of our tomatoes all ready, and we've cut off all of the stem parts and the ugly parts, and I've got a pot of boiling water here. This is the pot that I'm going to actually make the sauce in. This is an 8 quart, I believe. Yes, an 8 quart pot, and so that is, I'm going to try to get this just absolutely as full as possible for one batch of sauce. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the skins. Now you can completely skip this step if you would like, but we like to go ahead and remove the skins because it helps with my next step. So I've got a sink full of cold water. So after these sit in the boiling water for a couple minutes, you'll start to see the skins starting to look wrinkly and disconnect at the edge. Once they do that, I just take my slotted spoon and I grab them and I bring them over to my sink. If you don't have the sink space or don't want them in your sink, get like one of the ice cube trays that you might keep, or not the trays, but the buckets. I don't know what they're called. Anyways, you can put like an insert in there if you don't want that right in your sink. And in the other side of my sink, I have like a strainer on top of a stainless steel bowl. So I will show you why and how I use that. This is going to be to separate a lot of the juices. I'll get the juice in this bottom thing. Now it won't be strained completely. We'll be straining the juice at a later time once we collect it all. But we will get all that juice in the bottom. It's going to go into these jars. So I've got some jars sitting here that I'm going to go ahead and put the juice in. That way we can can the juice separately, and we'll have 2 products in one. So these, you can see the skins are starting to peel off. So I'm going to go ahead and put these in that cold water. Alright, and we'll let those sit until we can touch them without burning ourselves. So also I should mention, I already have all of my canning supplies ready. So I've got my water bath canner here, and it is kind of on a medium heat. I have it full of quart-sized jars that I'm going to be using. And I've got my lids and rings. Everything is all washed clean and ready to go. My canner is hot, so once my sauce is ready, I can go ahead and put it in the jars and everything. So I like to have everything done in a sequence, I guess. So because it can get kind of chaotic if you're trying to make your sauce and chop up your vegetables and do everything all at the same time. So I like to just get all of my jars and everything like that ready first and set aside so I don't have to worry about, are my jars clean, are they ready, are they warm, all that stuff. I've also already pre-chopped my onions and my green peppers. Alright, so here are my onions. I'm going to be putting 4 cups of onions and 2 cups of chopped green pepper. They're just rough chopped, nothing special, because we are going to be blending this in. You're never going to notice it. I've got all of my spices here, and I'll show you those. I'll let you know what those are, or put in the description box below. These are ready, so I'm going to again take them from the hot water and put them into that cold sink, and I'll show you the next step. Alright, so once you are able to touch your tomatoes, go ahead and remove the skins. The skins are going to go into my pig bucket, and the tomatoes are going to go over here into the strainer. And this is where it gets a little bit different than most people. So I want to remove as much of this juice ahead of time as possible. I don't want to cook this on my stove until everything is evaporated. That just takes too long and is such a waste of a good product that we use. So I am going to, now if you don't get all the skin off, that's perfectly fine. Sometimes when there's a spot like that that's not super ripe, it doesn't come off very well, and that's fine. And if you want to skip taking the skins off completely, that's fine too. But I don't want to waste any of the juice from these tomatoes, and I don't want to be scooping it out later in my pot because it takes up a lot of room in my pot. So when I put these into my strainer, now I have clean hands, so I just squeeze these tomatoes. They're very soft and a little bit warm. And we're kind of pre-processing this before we go and put them into the pot. That way the juices will drain down into our bowl. We don't need any special contraptions. We don't have to buy anything fancy to process these. We're going to do this with the seeds in. My family doesn't mind having seeds in. And so yes, I do remove the skin because it helps with this step. But you can definitely just keep the skins on. I like to just help the juice go out. And once I get a bunch of like tomato meat in here, I'll go ahead and get that dumped into our pot to start cooking the sauce. Right, so like I said, you don't have to remove your skins if you don't want to, and if you don't have time to process all your tomatoes in one day too, after you remove all the ugly parts and the stems and stuff, you can just put those in freezer bags and freeze those until you have the time to go ahead and can them. But I know it's really trendy these days to like put all of your tomatoes into like a roaster, like a giant roaster, and let them cook on your counter for a couple days without a lid until all the juice has kind of evaporated into thin air. But I just cannot bring myself to do that. It seems so wasteful to me, and we really rely on having a lot of tomato juice on our shelf. So I like to do this, and I just keep doing it in batches until I get all of it processed. It's super easy, and you know, once you get the hang of it, it's not very much time really. very easy to do. After you have put them in the boiling water, they're very warm and squishy. So it's very easy to just squish all that excess juice into your pot. And then all those skins get to go to my pigs, which is a very big benefit as well. So after I get a bunch of the meat in there, I kind of swirl it around, make sure a lot of that juice has gone down. Now I don't like make sure every bit of juice goes down. I do that later on in the pot. But I will get this tomato meat out, and you can see down here below how much juice we already have in here. So this juice will, as this gets full, I'll put it into a jar for after my sauce is done. I will can the juice, and then we will go ahead and dump this over here into our saucepan, or not saucepan, but our pot. So we'll go ahead and dump this into our pot, and we will start cooking this on low heat until we get this filled up. Now, as we get this filled up, we'll be taking our ladle and ladling out the juice as it cooks, and you can see that there's a lot of juice left in there. Alright, so you can see we've got a couple quarts probably here of juice so far already, and I'm just going to add that to a jar, whatever kind of big jar. This is a gallon jar, but any kind of big container that you have. This is just temporary because we're going to can this after, but right now you can see it has seeds and all kinds of stuff in there. We're going to strain this before we can it, but right now we're just going to keep it like that and keep adding it and filling up our jars with that delicious juice. Now, as we cook our sauce, I've just got this turned on, so it's not even warm yet, but you can already see in here, come and look at that, you can already see all this juice still in there. And we want a nice thick juice or sauce. So as this cooks, you're going to see a lot more juice coming off, and we'll just use our ladle kind of like this and fill up our ladle with juice and go ahead and add it to our jar until it looks like we are at the thickness that we want it and the consistency that we want it, and then at that point we'll go ahead and add all of our other ingredients. So we're just going to, at this point, strain off as much juice as we need to, but I have a lot more tomatoes to process. We're gonna fill this up just as much as we can before we can it. So we're just gonna keep doing that, blanching those over here, putting them in the sink, skinning them, squishing them, and putting them in here. We're just gonna keep doing that, and we'll be right back. Alright, you can see now that this is starting to get warm, you can see how a lot of the juice is still in there and it's separating. So I take my ladle and kind of dip it in there and scoop off as much of the liquid as I can until I get it to a pretty close to how I want the finished sauce to be. Of course, there's a lot, you know, it's chunky and thick at this point, which is fine. We're gonna blend it up at the end, but I like to wait to blend it until I feel like it's about the right consistency. And I just have my jar right here next to the stove so that I can ladle that into my collection jar. And as I remove this juice, I get more space in my pot so I can add more tomato, and I just keep doing that until my pot is just about full. I still have to add the onions and the green peppers, so I allow room for that, but I fill it up pretty full. And I don't remember if I told you or not. I think I did. This is an 8-quart pot, so I don't weigh my tomatoes out, and I can't give you like a number of tomatoes to use for this process, since, you know, they're all going to be different sizes and different amount of liquid coming off of them. So if you just, you know, you can compare size with what size pot you have. If you have about the same size pot, then this will be good for you. You can alter the recipe to suit how much sauce you're making at one time. If you're making a huge batch, maybe you have a really nice huge pot, And then, you know, in that case, you could maybe double it. But this is how I remove the juice. And I just keep on doing this until it's about right. Alright, so we've been collecting the juice off of this. It was really full, but as you can see, it's gone down a bit. Now we have room. So we haven't added anything to this yet. This is all tomato. We still have to add our spices to make this spaghetti sauce. Now you could, of course, just keep it just like this and have it as plain sauce if you want to, you know, be able to just add your spices later. So it's a little bit, you know, if you don't want to can pasta sauce and pizza sauce, you could just leave it plain and do it later, but that's not my style. I like to have everything ready to go so I don't have to do that later. But this is looking like a nice consistency. As you can see, there's still a lot of juice in here. It's not like bone dry. There's lots of juice. But once I blend all this meaty tomato part up, it's going to be quite thick. I think it's going to be a good consistency. So I don't think I'm going to take any more juice off of that. So I wait to add my spices and my onions and all that because I don't want to take away any of that spices and stuff for my juice. I want my juice to just be salt and tomato juice. So I wait until it's about the consistency I want, which it is, and then I go ahead and add it after. So over here you can see I've got almost 2 gallons of juice off of this, along with this pot full of tomato, what will be sauce. So I'm going to go ahead now and add my 2 cups, roughly, of green pepper, roughly chopped, and then about 2 or 4 cups of chopped onion. You could leave this out, like feel free to alter it to your liking or to how much you're actually making. I didn't make up this recipe or anything. This is just a recipe that was already made, and I altered it to fit my needs with how much I can fit in my pot, how much I can do at a time. So I'm just gonna go ahead and stir this in. Got it on low heat, but it's still really hot. And I'm gonna let this simmer for a little bit so that those tomatoes or the onions and the green pepper really start to soften up and cook into the tomatoes. You can see it's nice and juicy yet. But I'm going to let these cook for a while. I'm going to also add my spices right now. I will leave all of the ingredients in the description box below, but this is all of the spices that I'm putting in here. I already pre-measured everything out so that I didn't have to worry about that as I had tomatoes simmering on the stove. So I've got Italian seasoning, garlic powder, creole seasoning, salt, paprika. I think that's about it. And you can alter that. If you have a specific spaghetti recipe that you like to use, please feel free to use that. There's also lots of recipes in the Ball canning books, which I use frequently, so that looks like it's going to be a really nice sauce. Very pretty color. Alright, so now that we have it all mixed in, I'm just going to let this simmer for a little bit, like I said, until everything, the onions and green peppers are nice and soft. And then we're going to go ahead and blend this up and turn it into actual sauce. So we'll be right back here shortly. Alright, so we've been simmering this for a little bit to soften up those onions and green peppers. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the stove off right now. And I am going to now, we like a nice smooth sauce. So I'm going to go ahead and use my immersion blender to blend this all up into a nice creamy sauce. Or a nice smooth sauce, not necessarily creamy, I guess. But I just have this Cuisinart. I don't know if they still make this. I've had this for years and years and years. Probably 10 plus years. So I'm going to use this, but use whatever kind of immersion blender that you have. Now you could also probably put this in like an actual blender, but it might be kind of messy. If you're using a stick blender, make sure you don't operate it up here at the surface. Only hit that button when it's down below the surface, or you will get splattered with hot liquid. So be very careful. Sometimes I come up to the top and push those green peppers and stuff down, but this works fabulously. You can see already it's very nice looking sauce. I'm gonna just keep stirring. If I see any chunks, yeah, I can definitely tell there's some chunks, so I'm just gonna keep going until it's at the consistency we like. Alright, so that looks like a really nice, smooth, no chunks sauce. You can see with a slotted spoon about the consistency. Of course, if you guys like it chunky, don't blend it as much as me. Like, there's a chunk. It's okay though. Alright, but it is now ready to be canned up, and our jars, since they've been sitting in the canner, are all set. So I'm going to go ahead and carry this on over to my filling station and start filling up these jars. Alright, so we are canning these in quart jars today. We've already filled up a couple jars. We're just going to fill up our canner. Mine holds 7 quarts at once. I'm going to go ahead and fill 2 jars at once. So you're going to need some kind of acid, because tomatoes these days are bred more for like sweetness and flavor and not necessarily their pH. So because we can't guarantee the pH level, the acidity level of our tomatoes, we need to add some kind of an acid. So we're either going to add 2 tablespoons of bottled lemon juice or 2 tablespoons of white vinegar. Either one works. I've used them both and I don't notice any kind of flavor change. So whatever you prefer, it does need to be bottled. Do not use homemade vinegar or homemade, like home squeezed lemon juice. It needs to be bottled. That's the only way that you can have consistent and very regulated amount of acidity in there. So alright, we're going to go ahead and fill these up now. We got 2 tablespoons, like I said, of an acid, and we're going to go ahead and fill up our jars to 1/2 inch of headspace. So because this is a liquid, you don't need to air bubble poke these. But we are going to fill these to 1/2 inch headspace, and then we will wipe our lids, or wipe our rims rather. Alright, that's about good. Space. It's pretty good. Clean our rims. I have some white vinegar on this rag to cut the grease, any kind of grease or film that could be on here. We don't want any seeds or anything on our rims, so that it would prevent our seal from sealing properly. Rings to fingertip tight, and then we're going to put these back and keep going until we run out of sauce. So we got our our jars in the canner, and we're going to go ahead and add our little top thing. Alright, and our lid. And we are set to canning, so as soon as this comes to a rapid boil, we will set our timer and process these for 40 minutes, and then we'll see you back here. Alright, so while that is processing for 40 minutes, we have plenty of time to go ahead and start making some more sauce. We have probably 2 more batches of sauce. And while we wait, I wanted to go ahead and show you guys how I strain out and kind of essentially make the tomato juice. So you've seen over here, let me show you. You saw our juice. It's juice with seeds and some meat, I guess, in there. And almost 2 gallons with this first batch, so we will have a good amount of juice. But I don't want to can it with all of that meat and seed and stuff in it, so I've got kind of my same setup here with my strainer. This is actually my steamer basket for steaming on the stovetop, and my same stainless steel bowl. And to strain it, I find that a good old-fashioned flour sack towel works the best. So a nice little tea towel, flour sack towel works the best. It will probably stain it a little bit reddish, orangish color. That's okay. These are essential to my kitchen, and I use them for so much stuff and straining so much stuff, so I don't expect them to stay perfect and white and stain free. But I find this works a lot better for me than I get better results with this versus the cheesecloth that I have. So this is what I use. I just put it on top of that, and I'm going to go ahead and pour in my juice a little bit at a time. So I don't quite fill this up, but I fill it maybe half full or so at a time. And this will not run all through by itself, so we're going to actually squeeze this out at some point, but we're going to let it sit and kind of move it around and manipulate it until it gets strained through. And then I just have another jar set aside, and I will, once I strain this through there, I can put it into a nice new clean jar, put the lid on, and it'll be ready for canning. So I just gather up all the edges of this and make sure it's not too hot to touch, and then I will just kind of twirl this around real tight and keep straining and straining until this is basically just tomato pulp and seed. You know, it's kind of like tomato puree, but it has seeds in it. So this is going to go into the pig bucket for our pigs. They will just love it. And then that yummy juice will be canned up. Alright, so I've just been twisting it and squeezing it until it's pretty much done dripping. This is mostly just pulp and seeds left. So we'll go ahead and show you what that looks like. Untwist our towel. And we're left with seeds and pulp. So we'll just put that over here into our pig bucket. And then I usually like to rinse my towel so that I don't lose the ability to strain, and then we just keep doing that over and over. But I'll show you the nice juice that we end up with. We'll go ahead and put that in the jar. So we're going to go ahead and put this into our clean jar, and now we have this beautiful tomato juice, kind of a 2-for-1 thing here. We get this beautiful juice to can up for our chilies and goulash and things of that nature. I love canning tomato juice, so I'm going to go ahead and continue straining off this tomato juice, and we will be back soon. Alright, it is about 9:30 and we're trying to go ahead and get this juice all canned up. We got all of our spaghetti sauce canned up, and we are now trying to get as much of this done as we can tonight. So we got all of our juice strained, and we ended up with, these are each a gallon, so we ended up getting a little over 3.5 gallons of tomato juice. So after that, after I strained it all, I just let it sit in the jars and finished up canning my spaghetti sauce. So now we're ready to can this up. I've already got all my jars and everything ready like normal. And I'm just gonna bring this to a boil, and then it will be ready to go ahead and get into our jars. So this is just plain tomato juice. We haven't added anything yet. Alright, our tomato juice is all hot, and we are ready to go ahead and get it in the jars and get it in the canner. Right. Make sure your jars are nice and hot. I'm going to do a couple at a time. Alright, so again, we have to add our bottled lemon juice just like we did before with the sauce. 2 tablespoons. Alright, and then for this, like I said, we haven't added anything to it, it's just juice. But we are going to add 1 teaspoon of salt. Now if you were doing pints, you would want to just do half of a teaspoon. And the salt is completely optional, you can leave it out as well, but the lemon juice is not optional. So make sure you put the lemon juice in, and you can pick whether you want the salt or not. Alright, and we're just going to ladle this in. Should be a little bit closer. Make sure you give it a stir, because your juice is going to start to separate. So I like to just stir it up now and again. I'm going to go ahead and just fill our jars to 1/2 inch of headspace, just like our sauce was. And then we're going to process this the same as well. So we're going to be doing 40 minutes for quarts. I'll try to keep all this information down below in the description box. So if you missed something, go ahead and check there in the description box. Alright, doesn't that look so nice? Hopefully we can get this all jarred up before bed. That way tomorrow we can either not can, or I might pressure can potatoes tomorrow. Not sure. We'll see. Alright. Should be pretty good. We're going to check our headspace here so we can fit a little bit more in there. Alrighty. Okay. We are good to go. So we're going to wipe our rims again with a clean cloth. Make sure you have a nice clean rim and no chips. Alright. 2 lids and 2 rings. Alright, and we're just going to go ahead and fill up our canner and process these. got all of our jars falling into the canner. So we have got it turned up, the lid. All right. Okay, like I said, you're gonna wanna process these for 40 minutes, and then you're gonna wait 5 minutes after you turn off your canner and take the lid off. You're gonna wait 5 minutes at least before you take those jars out. And then I'm gonna have another batch after this. So, all right, you guys, so that is how I can my pasta sauce and tomato juice in one. It's like getting 2 products with just one. So I absolutely love that. This is my favorite way to process tomatoes. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video and found it useful. And if you like videos like this, make sure you subscribe, and I will see you guys next time.